Hi everyone, I'm Rosie Reese. Welcome. This is the podcast Out in the Real World, and my hope is that if you have gone through a major change and are experiencing feelings of uncertainty, that you will find comfort and support through this podcast.
Out in the real world. Out in the real world.
I'm very excited because today we have our guest, Maddie Robbins. Just a little bit of background of Maddie and I. I was a freshman, so we both went to the same university, SUNY Geneseo, upstate in New York. And my freshman year, you were a senior at that point, right?
Yes.
And so Maddie was very involved in the radio station, and that's how we had a lot of our interactions. And that was my first time experiencing anything related to journalism. So I was very excited, and I definitely felt like Maddie was a mentor towards me. So it was helpful that during COVID, after Maddie graduated, she would share certain things about her experience, and that was helpful for me to see what that could be my future later on. So, yeah, so Maddie's going to tell us about her story and try to get to know more about her post grad life. So, Maddie, if we're going to take it back all the way, actually, before we do that, sorry. Maddie, tell us a little bit about yourself.
I recently graduated grad school from Sacred Heart University in Fairfield, Connecticut. There I got an MFA in film and television production. Backtracking a little bit, like Rocio mentioned before, we went to SUNY Geneseo together, and that's where I got my intro to filmmaking, more so video production there. Um, we had some classes offered there in video production and TV production, and that's how I got my interest peaked there, my foot in the door to what that world could be like. And I used my experience there to further pursue it in a grad degree at Sacred Heart.
I'm looking forward to our conversation when you discuss more about that journey. So,
Mm-hmm.
let's go back all the way from your first memory of when you knew that you wanted to pursue college. When was that moment?
So for me, that's something I knew. I'd say as far as middle school, that's something that was kind of expected. Like that was just the general track. My family's aspirations for me, aspirations for myself. If I wanted to pursue something else, like a trade or any other thing that's not college, they would have supported that. But me personally, I knew I wanted to continue my education post high school.
Did your parents go to college?
They did, yes. They both have 4-year degrees. Um, their parents did not go to college, so they are the first of their generation to get a college degree.
Did you know prior to going to college that you wanted to study communication?
No, actually, so I knew I wanted to continue learning. I love being a student and I love learning new things. But I didn't know what I wanted to specialize in or pursue more in depth. So at the end of high school, I went into Geneseo as technically I was a business major. And because I thought that was a safe bet, business is applicable to many industries, and it's something that um, it's just good to know. Um, but in my own head, I was thinking, I'm kind of undecided because, yeah, I'm going in as a business major, and yes, it's helpful, but I don't know how much I'll like it. And when I got there, I loved Geneseo. I loved the friends I was making, but I found I wasn't enjoying my classes. And it's not because they weren't good, like the education was great. I just didn't feel fulfilled like coming out of class. And yeah, I was learning a lot, but not what I think I was meant to be learning or to really dedicate all my time to. Um, so about a year and a half into school. So this was after my third trimester because I didn't take summer classes. I switched to a communication degree because that's also a degree that I felt like could be very useful for many areas. And I guess you can see a trend here. Like in life, I still didn't know what I wanted to do. I was just trying to find degrees that I thought would be useful to me and whatever I ultimately landed upon. Um, so I switched and I started enjoying my classes. It turned out to be a good switch for me. I was learning a lot, useful information, and the enjoyment of my classes. I felt like I had everything at that point.
Now, I did mention in the introduction that you got heavily involved at the radio station at SUNY
Yes.
Geneseo. So, what motivated you to do that, and what was that experience like for you?
Yeah. So um, I began becoming involved with the radio station. That's WGSU 89.3 FM. Um, After my sophomore year. So that's when I started. It started because I wanted hands on experience in something, and Geneseo offered, some things like the newspaper, but I didn't see myself as like a written journalist. I wanted to pursue something like television based or broadcast based. So that's where I turned my attention to the radio station, because I knew they offered opportunities for me to actually do things. Whereas, like, a lot of Geneseo's communication classes are based in a classroom and lecture style, which there's nothing wrong with that and you need that. But I was just trying to seek more opportunities for me to get hands on experience. So once my junior year began, I started helping out within the news department. And I would do the evening daily news, I think like once or twice a week, nothing major. It wasn't like that big of a time commitment. Essentially, I'd like help write the local, national, and international news, and then I'd go on air and I'd broadcast it. And that gave me like that made me feel very fulfilled and like I was doing something important, and I just enjoyed doing it. And I met a great group of people there who had similar interests. And I think there's just something cool about people coming together to make something, in this case, a radio station, a better place to be, to work, to represent. Um, and it was a cool subset of like Geneseo. I don't know, had like quirky vibes. Um, but that's how I got involved in radio, and I began to enjoy giving the newscasts uh, more so. Like I fell into my footing, became more comfortable. I think I went up to like 3 days a week, or I was just always there. Like when I didn't know where to go, I just hang out, even if I wasn't delivering the daily news or like working that day. And eventually, I was promoted to the news and public affairs director. So now I was in charge of overseeing all the newscasters, scheduling them, training them, best practices for radio delivery, and just for working at a uh, smaller radio station in general. And this continued through my senior year. I actually worked between junior and senior year. I worked at WGSU over the summer. Most of the students go home. Not too many commuters at the time were working at the station, so no one was really around. And the person in charge usually elected one person to stay over the summer, and I happened to be there that summer, so it just worked out. Um, and then come senior year, I was still the news and public affairs director, but I graduated to also the operations manager. And for those who don't know, that's just like the person in charge of all the department heads, just overseeing like departments generally, not just news, although I'm still maintaining that title as well. Um, But so I'm talking a lot about my news and radio background, but really my true passions lied in video production. At the same time where all of this was happening, I was taking courses um, in that field, and I loved the convergence of like mixing sound. I like seeing visuals with sound, and I know there's spaces within the audio world like visual podcasts where both those both of those are mixed, but I just liked storytelling more so, and not necessarily from like a news based or factual background. Like I like creating my own stories and then representing them visually and audio wise in like short form media. So in addition to video production and TV production classes, yes, I was still at the radio station. So I was really doing a lot of content creation, if you will, at the time.
I love seeing that progression of you feeling uncertain with what major you wanted to do and eventually find your passion for filmmaking and learning more behind what how the camera works and all of that. Your
Yeah.
senior year was interesting because that is also when COVID hit, right? So, did you
hmm
have a plan after your graduation like, okay, I want to pursue journalism? Like, did you know what you wanted to do and how did COVID kind of affect that?
So COVID definitely put a mean old wedge in all my plans. It didn't help. I know everyone was most people were put at a disadvantage because of that, especially career wise. For starters, not a great time to be graduating college because in general, I feel like it's already hard enough to get a job, especially one that coming out of school that you at least kind of like. I know most people don't like their first job, but between the pandemic and like productions being shut down, nothing was really attainable at the time. I knew I wanted to become more involved with some sort of visual production, whether it be for a TV network or like filmmaking. I wanted to be like a crew member on a production, and everything was shut down at the time. So it was not an ideal time to graduate. I then tried to pursue radio positions because, the art of being on the air, it doesn't require you to work with many people. Like you can be in your own booth operating, putting together news packages or stories, and you don't necessarily have to be interacting with coworkers. Whereas, like, working on a TV show, and I can say this from experience because I have done that as well at this point. Yes, it takes a village. You need a lot of people. So COVID just put an end to all of that temporarily, which was unfortunate for me, my predicament. So I got a job as a secretary in a hospital. And, I was very fortunate for that because I needed to work. I had loans to pay. And, you graduate college. The next thing most people like to do or need to do is work. And I was lucky to have received that role. And I do believe that you learn something in every job you have. And that was my first like real job out of school. And I definitely learned a lot, especially working in a hospital in a pandemic. It was stressful, but um, it's what I had to do. And it worked out for the time being. Uh, I never lost sight of filmmaking and like video production. So while I was working this job, things were still shut down, but I thought, Geneseo gave me a great foundation and it introduced me to this world, and to no fault of its own, but it didn't really like immerse me in the world. I wanted to learn more. There were things I knew I didn't know, but I wanted to know them. So I was then looking at grad schools for filmmaking or visual storytelling, whatever the program labeled them. And Sacred Heart is a school I actually considered for my undergrad education. I didn't end up there, obviously, but something I remembered me liking the school. And when I found out they had um, a graduate film degree, I was very interested and I applied and I got in. And then I went there.
And you did amazing things there, which we'll also get
Thank you.
more information about. But kind of going back to that process of, COVID and seeing what were available, how was that on your mental health? Because I recently graduated in May from
Mm-hmm.
SUNY Geneseo. And so I've been dealing with a lot of self realizations about myself, and the process of applying to jobs can be difficult at times. And I think a lot of it is maybe
Yes.
self doubt or just knowing that it's a very competitive, the lack of opportunities are out there.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm curious to know what that was like for you.
Yes. And this is something that I can speak a lot about because it's something I'm currently going through as well. And I'll get to that, but it's for different reasons. But post Geneseo in the pandemic, you really like made some points there. I felt like a failure at times. Like I was very studious in school. I did well in like I did everything that my professors asked me to, and I really tried to take on every opportunity. So when I graduated and then I found no opportunities, I felt like it was almost a slap in my face. Like, why did I go to all this work just to not have a job or not have any offers? Um, and the act of applying to jobs is a job in and of itself. Like, it is grueling, it's tiring. I spent like that year before I obtained a job at the hospital. I must have sent out like in total near like 300 to 500 applications slash inquiries. I requested a lot of informational interviews just so they know my name, just even if nothing's available right now, just so they remember me and maybe I'll obtain a little bit more information about whatever company it was I was applying to at the time. But it was very frustrating and very disheartening to be coming from school to this. Like in school, especially Geneseo, it's a small liberal arts school. It really felt like a community. Everyone knew each other there. And then you're just cast out into the world and trying to find your footing, trying to find a new community, a new schedule, new just finding your place post school, and to be told no, or even worse than no is just never hearing back from employers. And I feel like that's even more common than no, because at least no is an answer. Like, fine, I wasn't a fit, but just sending resumes and cover letters off into the abyss and never hearing back, it's draining.
There are a lot of things that you discussed that honestly really spoke to me in my current situation too, because like Maddie mentioned, SUNY Geneseo is a very small school, so the access to resources are available to you and you do feel supported. The community is very encouraging. And I think both of us, well, when I said that Maddie was really involved in radio, I mean, everyone in school, everyone, especially in the communication department, knew Maddie's name. She also had experience with being a teacher's assistant for some of the courses in communication. So she really had a lot of leadership positions and mentorship roles. So to kind of go from a space and an environment for 4 years where you really felt like you were being challenged, where you were doing things that fulfilled you, to now realizing that all that you did might not be as significant was hard for me to process as well. And even that, word that you said, right, feeling like a failure. I've definitely had moments like that when applying. And it's just mind blowing because, when I put myself back in college, I'm like, the things that I accomplished, I never would have thought that I would have been able to accomplish. But when you're taken out of that, I just felt like that held no weight in the real world. Really, that's what I felt
Mm-hmm.
like. And that was so hard for me to really process, and that is why I wanted to do a podcast like this, because there's something about post grad, there's something about your 20s where you really feel lost and you are trying to figure out your identity, and a lot of things are out of your control. And sometimes, as someone who is a people pleaser and a perfectionist, it's really hard to realize that I'm doing my part, but there really is nothing coming at me, no opportunities, not hearing from anything.
Yeah.
So, thank you for sharing a little bit about that process.
Of course, yeah. And what you said just now rings true. Like, it really is a culture shock coming out of school to being like thrust into or expected to launch into the quote unquote real world. I don't like that term so much, but like the working, employed, non-student world. Um, the expectations are high, and I don't think like because I know social media doesn't help it in any way, especially like job platforms like Indeed and LinkedIn. Like, they're supposed to help you find jobs, but oftentimes it's really just I find people boasting about like, oh, I landed this position. It's very similar to Instagram in a way. It's like flaunting your lifestyles. Well, it's kind of like flaunting your career. And I personally have not had success or very little success in landing positions through like job sites. It's really like connections, and a lot of time, especially in this industry, like people you've met prior, who you know in a way, like you've worked with someone in the past on a project and they remember you and you reach out. It's like those in-person connections, I think, are way more valuable than you know, reaching out to random people online and hoping like they like your resume. And I'm not saying it doesn't work. I'm just saying it's harder that way.
I agree. And I think for me too, I've been spending a lot of my time in LinkedIn because, again, you're applying to jobs and seeing like internships that may pop up.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, especially where I was mentally at during the summer, I found myself being like, just take a break from absorbing all this information, because
Mm-hmm.
when you're not in a good headspace and you're seeing that everybody has it figured out, everybody's getting an opportunity,
Mm-hmm.
that those negative thoughts that you say to yourself are much more stronger. And
Yeah.
I found myself comparing a lot, and I would tell myself, it's not that I feel like, oh my gosh, they're not deserving of this. No, I was happy for them. I think it was more of a reminder of all the areas that I was lacking in. And that was
Mm-hmm.
really hard for me. So, LinkedIn, I would just go to the job search, search up thing and focus on that. So that was also hard. And it's something that I'm still trying to learn, figuring out myself during this time period. Um, Another thing that I quickly do want to touch base on, because I think it's also a reality for people who maybe want to pursue a master's program, right? But I know that you were working two jobs during that time period as you were applying. And how was that as well, juggling with just all this responsibility, not having time for yourself? And even though it was a COVID period, some people are so fortunate enough to still be able to find time for themselves, or make vacations and all of that. And obviously on social media, it's our highlights. So who doesn't want to show all the wonderful things that are happening? But again, when you're in a headspace that is not the highest, you may compare yourself or feel very overwhelmed with your reality. So what was
Mm-hmm.
that like for you?
So yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because I know I haven't mentioned that yet. Um, During COVID, in addition to my hospital job, I was working at a bakery I've been working at since I was in like early high school. Um, I was working there weekends, so in total, I was working 7 days a week. And I am very lucky. I was employed during COVID, and I fortunately did not get sick. So there's a lot I was very grateful and fortunate for, but at the same time, I developed this grind mentality, which is not healthy, and I feel like it's almost employers' way of like motivating their workers, I find, or just like online, like grind, don't stop, like keep working. And I feel like those mentalities are very prevalent in our country, and I don't think they're healthy, like physically or mentally. Like, yes, it's one thing to be motivated and want to do a good job, but at the same time, you have to take care of yourself. And that year, I really was not doing a good job of like caring for me. um like, yeah, I I use grad school, or the hope of like, literally the hope of escaping what I was currently going through, as like my light at the end of the tunnel. Um, in the moment, no, I was not happy, and I was not like thriving. I wasn't doing what I thought I'd be doing a year ago. Like, pre-COVID, I'm in the height of school. It's not it's not what I thought it would be.
Um, Now you did end up, like you said, pursuing your master's in filmmaking at Sacred University. So what was that
Yes.
transition like from a school like SUNY Geneseo, which is a public, state university of New York, to Sacred University? Tell me about your experience there and what did you learn about yourself, most importantly?
hmm So it was weird because I've always gone to public schools my whole life, including SUNY Geneseo. It's a public school. Um, the people there are different, like, because Sacred Heart is a private school, and I feel like I've met great people. I had great professors, but they definitely had a lot more resources, and it was like jarring at first. I'm like, how do you guys have all this? This is insane. Like, Geneseo did a great job of, providing everything and all that they can, but there are definitely more like internship opportunities through Sacred Heart. Um, the technology and equipment given to us, like, was professional level, and I Geneseo's was not. Like, we, in film school at Sacred Heart, we had our own equipment room. Like, Geneseo just had, a few cameras, which is fine, but like, there is a difference, and I'm fortunate I've got to experience both. At the same time, I feel like a lot of the people I've encountered, I'm not necessarily my program, just like overall at the school, they're more entitled, and like, of course we should have this. Why wouldn't we? Like, they expect it. So it was nice, both like in terms of what I knew knowledge wise, like I graduated and I earned like the equipment and the knowledge to be studying this, because like I didn't know all this. If you gave someone who didn't know anything about this and you just gave them all the toys, like, I feel like you appreciate it more when you work your way up and you you learn from the ground up.
I love that you mentioned that because you're right. I mean, even when Maddie was describing like the radio station, it is a very old equipment that we have, but I think that was also part of its charm is it was very
hmm
nostalgic and very cute and uh even the fact that it was old, there was something about it that just felt, homey. But tell me, how did this master program help you as someone who wanted to learn more about filmmaking? Because Maddie, you did a lot of things in your program, and maybe you could talk a little about your internship experiences. Because again, going from SUNY Geneseo, and her experience was within the school, which was the radio station, and it was more of like a club, and it had aspects of an internship, but she really went out there and had an internship opportunity that is very cool. So tell us about that journey.
Yeah. So, well, I'll start at the beginning of grad school. So, in our program there, you're expected to write, direct, and edit three short films. They're of various lengths, but you do one a year, and then you do your final one the summer of when you're graduating. That's your thesis film. So that is like the crux of the program. And you spend a lot of time in pre production, like writing, like blue skying ideas, rewriting. That's like the biggest part of writing. Um, and then just pre-production in terms of like getting everything together. Like, we're expected to hire our own actors, like professional level, um, go out and secure locations, get production and insurance. So a lot of things you don't think about. Like, you think about making like a short film or like a video, it's usually like with your friends in your parents' house, and like that is great. Like that, being creative in whatever space you can find with whoever you're with, that, I think that's fantastic. But school really helped you to see a more professional picture. Like, yes, you have that available to you, but like, how can we improve upon, make it more professional? So really learning like best filmmaking practices. That was the first year of um, my schooling there. And then during my second year, it was a 2 year program. It was still that. I still made another film. I made one the fall of when I came back. That was my second film. But then I wanted to seek outside activities besides. So oftentimes, like how it works is if you work on my film set this weekend, I'll go work on yours. That's the mentality I had with me and my classmates, and it works out great because you learn a lot. You oftentimes do different positions. Like I'll like be your lighting person or your gaffer on your set. You come and be the hair and makeup person on mine. Stuff like that. But there's this also expectation that we would go out and find like local independent films to work on, which we did. Sometimes they were commercials or PSAs, sometimes they were just other filmmakers in the area. Um, Sometimes the professors would send out opportunities they get, like, hey, this is a guy I know. He's looking for a script supervisor. Anyone interested? Let me know. And you'd go off and do that on the side. And that was kind of like how you get your foot in the door in small ways. And some like you could count those as internships. But in my second year, I was doing a lot of that and enjoying it, but I wanted to have even more experiences. And I met someone on one of those local film sets who happened to be the line producer on a daytime talk show called Sherry, which tapes in the city. So he told me, yeah, send me your resume because he liked working with me. I liked working with him. And I officially applied to be an intern for that show as well as continuing going to school. And I got the position. And that is a true case of it's kind of about networking and who you meet. And that's not something like I saw posted on Indeed or LinkedIn. That is something I met someone who works on the show. They liked me and my work and invited me to like send a resume to help pass along and help get me in contact with the hiring people there. And yeah, I had my own interviews, and then I went to the process of like actually interviewing. But it's just prior experiences that led me to that. So that was an internship I held for 6 months. We run on trimesters at that school, but it was from January to June. At the same time, I also had a part-time job working as a graduate assistant, or that's just like assistant, at a local community theater that my school ran as well. So I would like help make promo videos. I would secure and license all the films they screen there, because like you can't just, for a public facing audience, you can't just show a film, especially if you're collecting like money for admission. You have to like go secure the licensing and rights to show that film. So that was my job. And I helped with live events because they had those as well.
What do you think were some of the things that you, or I guess like some tools or skills that you had gained from your undergraduate career that helped you adjust to your master's program?
Mm-hmm. Um, that's a great question because I learned a lot at Geneseo. Um, I'd say at least in a filmmaker's sense, I learned a lot of terms in those video production courses that like some people came into the program not knowing anything, and that's fine. The program's designed for people of all levels, just wanting to increase their knowledge and skill set in like filmmaking. But I already knew what a gaffer was, or a best boy, or a grip. Like these are all film terms, and that's something. It's small, but like that's something I was taught at Geneseo. I'm like, oh, I know what that is. Um, I guess on a broader spectrum, just how to conduct yourself in a professional environment. That's something WGSU really ingrained in me, especially if you're in a leadership role like I was. Um, these small film sets I mentioned, I was often the director of photography. And for those who don't know, that's like the camera person, the cinematographer. And that's a pretty high role. You're a department head. So a lot of responsibility fell on me to create like a shot list prior to all these films, talk with the director about what vision they see and what shots we can get to capture that vision, to tell the story in the best way possible. So really taking initiative and collaborating with people